Hello, everyone, and welcome to the November 18th edition of Seminar Sunday on how to effectively chair a meeting. This is our regular Sunday night seminar that we host weekly, and we will have another few more seminars before we take a break for Christmas. We'll be taking a 2-week break and then coming back beginning of January again on the weekly seminars, taking us all the way till the end of June. Tonight, our theme is around how to chair a meeting. And we have a special guest tonight. With me is Rome Gallardo, past Division E Director. Rome Gallardo, ACB, CL. And Rome was a past president as well of a club that I consider to have one of the better ways of running and chairing a meeting. And I found it to be a very effective way to run a meeting. So I'd like to use him to bounce some ideas off and to get some feedback. And so welcome, Rome.
Welcome. Hello.
Rome.
Good evening, everyone.
All right, so we're going to be bouncing ideas back and forth
a
little bit against
everyone.
Okay, so we'll be exchanging some ideas back and forth on some of the best practices that he's experienced and that we've experienced, and I'll be sharing some information along the way of things that have come from Toastmasters International and also some things that we've learned directly ourselves. Also be looking for some input from you on some things that you've done that you may have done within your club that were really effective in chairing a meeting. So I look forward to having that feedback. Without further ado, we're just going to jump into a quick, just go for the objectives first, and we'll jump into some of the poll question. So today, I want to focus on learning best practices for running a meeting, and you will understand why that's important. You also learn how to turn guests into members. By having an effectively run meeting, you put on a professional image, and that's one of the things we want to focus on tonight. So first up, before we get into too far, do you feel your club runs a good meeting? And we're going to do a little poll, official poll, and ask you to do that. And feel free to jump in and answer the poll question. And I'm going to share the results with you. I'm throwing some stuff out there and see how it goes. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. We have a few more people that have not voted yet. Come on, don't be shy. Get your votes in there. You should have them. Okay. We had, what happened to the poll results there? Hang on a second. Let's see if we can get that poll result back up there. Hopefully you all had a chance to, oh, I lost it. Okay, well, we had almost 100% saying they run a good meeting. Let me just double check that. Yeah, it was about 100% said that they run a good meeting. Now I find that interesting, and I'm glad to hear that you guys feel that you run a good meeting, because I've been to some that I felt had some room for improvement. So I want to go through some of the items that, as I said, Toastmasters International has put forward. And this comes from a magazine article that was posted in 2016, and it was on how to effectively run a meeting. And it had a couple of sections. One of them was on opening a meeting and closing a meeting. I wanted to get just to review some of these ideas. Now, Rome, you've got a lot of experience on chairing a meeting, and the first item they say here is starting on time. What's your thoughts on how important that is?
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. We respect everyone's time, especially with Toastmasters. We got to make sure we're on time. You know, come in 15 minutes early, greet the guest, or even talk to your team members, and if there's anything that you can do to improve the meeting itself, or something that will spark, especially when it comes down to guests. Guests is very important, and starting on time, for me, it's very important. I do that everywhere I go, and especially when it comes down to the meeting, we just have to respect each other's time. And especially when you talk about closing the meeting as well, we gotta close on time. It's respect each one. Definitely, I completely agree.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to come back and comment on it in a minute. Just I've neglected to remind everyone that we do have the chat. So if you can throw some comments into the chat section, those are always good. And if you want to ask any questions, there's a question area, although you can put them in the chat area. And we do appreciate emoticons if there's an appropriate time to throw one out there. Yeah, I fully agree with you 100%. To respect your guests and to respect your members, you need to make sure that you are running on time. You need to start on time. You need to make sure that everyone is aware of it. To a professionally run meeting is on time. Something I heard recently, and I think it came from Margaret Page, and I don't want to necessarily attribute it if it's incorrect, but I believe it came from her. And it's something like, and I'm paraphrasing, coming 15 minutes early to a meeting is on time. Arriving at the start of the meeting, you're late, and then you're very late if you come in after the meeting. So there's some reference to that saying that you got to come in there early. And I liked your comment about coming in 15 minutes early. Getting organized, getting prepared is the right thing to do. And you come in, you're organized, and you can take on a role. So there's some really good opportunities if you come in early, and so you can manage it. So I think that's also a great idea. Okay, second one is calling the meeting to order. So I'm not sure how many people don't call the meeting to order. I thought that was a standard thing, although I wouldn't be surprised if people don't necessarily gavel. Rome, do you have any experience with going to clubs that don't necessarily use a gavel to start the meeting?
Based on what I've seen before, we do start with the meeting with a gavel, but having a particular call to order, some clubs don't necessarily do that, but it's up to them. Some of the advanced club that I've been to doesn't necessarily have that, because some of them have only an hour of the meeting. And Richmond Toastmasters, we have opportunity to have 2 hours, so we have that call to order. But some clubs don't have the opportunity to have that full 2 hours. Some are even shorter period. That might, from my experience.
Yeah, and that actually might be a part of the challenge, is that you're trying to run things quickly. And if you actually are starting right on time, there may be some pressure on that. I just think it's a nice official thing. When the gavel hits the lectern, then you know that, okay, the meeting is official. It's no more prepping for it, getting organized for it. It's now we're into the meeting and we need to prepare for it. So I kind of like that approach. All right. Explaining the role of Toastmasters, or explaining what Toastmasters is, not the role necessarily, but explaining what Toastmasters is. I know that's something that Richmond Toastmasters does. I haven't seen that in a lot of places. And I think I'd like your feedback on that one, Rome. Do you feel that that's a benefit? I mean, obviously, if you don't have any guests that night, then you are maybe just repeating it to those who should already know, but maybe there's value in that. What's your thoughts?
It is a value, in my opinion, because you're there, and you need to explain why we are there. And for example, it is a benefits for the guests to kind of know what Toastmasters is. It kind of gives you a heads up, especially when there's a guest. But it also gives the fellow Toastmasters a recap. We are here that in order to learn, in order to listen, in order to capture learning from each other and making it fun. It is a reminder. Maybe to some it might not be a good idea, but it's definitely, for me, it's a good reminder that I'm there to have fun, to learn, and to evaluate, especially.
Yeah, I like that too. By the way, Jim Taylor just noted that the volume that you're speaking at is a little low, so I'm not sure if you can turn up your mic volume or if you can just get a little closer to the mic. I agree. I think that having that explanation, one of the things I liked about Richmond Toastmasters, and by the way, I'm using that as an example, and again, I don't want to point out that it's the best or the only one that does things right, but that was my home club, so I have the most familiarity with it. But one of the things that they do is they have a script for the chair. And the chair knows that they use the script. And the script is important because they're using it for multiple purposes. One of those things is to introduce the members themselves. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. But it has all of the pieces in there. And it makes certain that they're doing all the things and you don't miss anything. And while that's a little formal, I actually like it. And I miss doing that because I haven't seen that from other places. Everywhere else seems to be doing it from memory, what you do. Although I was at a club in the interior that did have a script, and the chair was using the script, and I was quite impressed with that. And I don't know if it was just that one event or whether that was a regular event. So I actually like that. The next one is around introducing guests. And by the way, Jim's asking, is there a resource for using an opening or for using an opening script? I know that the Toastmaster magazine article that I'm referencing there had some background information in it. It didn't have any attachments or any links to them. If you are interested, there is Richmond Toastmasters does have a wealth of information that they have for scripts for various roles. And I'd be willing to send out something that's older. It's not their current, because I am not a member of that club anymore. I moved from Richmond to Delta, and so belong to a couple of clubs in Delta. And so they have, but I do have an old script that they use. If anyone's interested in that, I see Jim, you're interested, I could provide that to you and some other resources. But introducing guests is the next one. And I know that most clubs ask guests to introduce themselves. What's your thoughts about having the guests introduce themselves or having everybody in the club introduce themselves, Ron?
It welcomes the camaraderie, and one of the things that guests sometimes at the end of the meeting, that one of the things that they say, oh, everyone's here so friendly, and everybody here trying to shake my hand, or everybody, I get to know them, just little bits and part of it. But that's the camaraderie of Toastmasters, is getting to know your guest, and once you welcome them, they definitely would want to come back because your friendly attitude, your how to run the meeting started, and everything is respected. Then definitely introducing your name, even everybody everywhere you go has a name tag. People will tend to speak to you if they know your first name.
I think with this one, I was referring to, the way I was referring to the introduction is where the chair would introduce the guests or ask them why they, ask them to introduce themselves. And I struggle with that one. I've been to clubs that do both, where they have everyone stand up and introduce themselves, and in other places where it's just they ask the guest to introduce themselves. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it better to have everybody introduce themselves quickly? And I know that was always a challenge because it takes up a certain amount of time. And in a club that only meets for an hour, it would consume probably 5 to 10 minutes. And so it would be a big chunk of it. But for a club that has a couple of hour or 2.5 hour meeting, the introduction might not be so bad. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Time is an essence when it comes down to introducing a guest. If the chair is there and on time, and get to meet the guest prior to that, then definitely welcome the guest, introduce their name, and make them feel welcome. Definitely, I agree. Having the chair, if time permits, definitely I would recommend to have the guest to stand up and introduce themselves.
Okay, good. Okay, now the next thing is pre-meeting announcements. Now this one was an interesting one. I didn't know of this. I've never seen this done, but it was in a Toastmaster magazine article, and I went, well, that's interesting. So it's before the actual formal meeting takes place. So you're having this pre-meeting announcement where you're saying, I guess you're giving an announcement saying, just to be aware that tonight this is what's going on. Some things. I mean, they do have the end of the meeting announcements about upcoming events. So this is, I think, in preparation for the meeting. I haven't seen that done anywhere, at least not on a consistent basis. And so I can't speak to that one. I'm not sure if anyone else has in the audience has seen that, has some comments on it. Feel free to throw some notes in the chat section. Rome, have you seen that done anywhere?
I have not seen any pre-announcements. I only see that when I make an appointment to a doctor or a dentist. But overall, it is a great idea. It's a great reminder to everyone that, it's a good communication level when it comes down to, especially with Toastmasters. That's my point.
Okay, so I just got a comment from Josanna saying each speech evaluator. Yes. Well, actually, we're going to talk about that one. I think that's a really important aspect where you introduce the speaker, the speech title, and so on. That Josanna, I think that's an excellent one, and we'll be talking about that one. The next item that's in here is checking for changes. And again, now this is right at the beginning, and this is something what I have seen happen. especially those clubs that don't have a tight or a really tight schedule, or not schedule, but a tight meeting control. The agenda is really tight. And what I'm saying is, I know that Richmond Toastmasters has an agenda where the chair, well, there's an expectation that every member that is signed up for a role or that gets signed up is going to do the role. And then the chair confirms in advance that like days in advance that they're going to be there, and it just reconfirms that they're going to be there. And the Toastmaster does that for the evaluators and the speakers. Right. And they make sure that they're all there. So they don't necessarily have to go and do something after the meeting starts and fill in any final roles or any changes. Usually that's all done before the meeting, and the meeting should run without having any significant changes or any changes that take place. But most clubs that I've been to, actually the first thing they do is they verify that everybody is there at the start of the meeting and adjust any changes that take place. I think that's what that's referring to. And I would think that that's a common thing. Rome, is that what you typically see, or do you see people actually doing everything well in advance like Richmond does?
Yeah, they do well in advance. However, sometimes there are some changes, when someone gets ill or something like that, emergencies may come up. And fortunate enough, Richmond Toastmasters have a monitor. We actually don't print an agenda. That monitor is connected to the computer, and then if there's any quick changes, we quickly type it in, and it's quickly done. But unfortunately, changes do happen, and we're with Richmond Toastmasters. We do have a monitor that quickly can change that out.
That's a really good point. I forgot to mention it or to include that in the thought process. But that's exactly true. When you have that large screen behind the chair that shows the agenda, it's very effective, and you don't have to worry about, if you have printed agendas, having to then let everybody know. I guess that's that checking for changes, is letting everyone know that if you had a printout saying that so and so this role will be done by this person and so on, so you're then letting everybody know that where the changes are. If you use a screen behind the chair, or a whiteboard, or some other means of doing it rather than printouts that would hard copy printouts that would change, you need to have some way to provide that information about the changes to your guests and to your members. So yeah, good point. All right, let's see. Jan just made a comment. Does this refer to sending a reminder that lets everyone know that a special guest will attend? That could be. That's going back to the pre-meeting announcements. That could very well be what that is. So if you're going to have a special event, letting people know. Although this is intended to take place right at the beginning of a meeting, or at the opening of a meeting. So it would be just a reminder at the meeting. This is not in advance of the meeting as such. This is, I think these items were listed, the 1 through 7 were listed right before you actually get into various roles doing things, other roles doing things, whether you start off with an inspirator, or you go into a joke, or you have prepared speeches, or whatever you're going to do at that point in time. I think that's what that was intended to be. Okay, introducing the Toastmaster. This one is interesting. I find this interesting. One of the best practices that was listed in Toastmasters magazine is that the person who chairs the meeting is the president of the club. And then they have a Toastmaster take over for the prepared speech portion, and they may have a table topic master do the table topics and so on. But they're saying that the chair of the meeting is typically the president. And I found that interesting, because I haven't seen that in any of the clubs I've been to in British Columbia. And it's not that I've been much further than that to go to Toastmasters clubs, but it tends to be that the chair is whoever is assigned to be the chair that week, as opposed to the club president. Have you seen any of that, Rome, where the club president takes on the role of chairing the meeting?
Oh, that is interesting. Sergeant at Arms traditionally would introduce Toastmasters in our end at Richmond Toastmasters, but that is interesting. It makes the president come in on time all the time, eh?
Well, I think that's the intent. Most clubs don't actually have a business meeting every meeting. I know that Richmond tries to have one, a business meeting in every meeting, a short business meeting. And I haven't seen that anywhere else unless it's a special. It's usually a special where they have a business meeting. So that's when you want to have the president there. But I haven't seen it where the president chairs a meeting. I'm not sure if anyone else has that as a regular within your club. And feel free to chime in. By the way, sorry, Anna, I missed a comment that you made. Isn't that what the SAA does as far as introducing the chair? This is, I think what this is saying is, and that's interesting because it could be the sergeant at arms that starts off this whole thing and does the gavel to get the meeting called to order. Some clubs use the sergeant at arms to do that. I am more comfortable with the chair formally gaveling, getting the meeting to order, where the sergeant at arms introduces the chair, and then the chair launches the meeting with the gavel. But it is. There are differences, but the sergeant at arms to me is the one who actually sets the stage and makes sure that the meeting starts on time, and then introduces whoever's going to chair and lead that meeting, whether it be a Toastmaster or it be the president or whoever. So yeah, I think that's a good point. So now let's. I'm going to jump to the next slide. So I want to get into, this is stuff that came from TI, that came on the Toastmasters magazine, and I have another slide about closing the meeting, which we'll get to after. But in the meantime, I want to get into the meat of things that I think are important that weren't addressed in the article. And this is where, from my experience, these are things that are pretty important and valuable, and I'll solicit input from the audience here as to things that they think are important as well. And Rome, I want your input on this. I'll be asking you for a lot of that. Preparing the agenda weeks in advance is something that I am so impressed with when a club does that. And I know that Richmond does it, usually does it a month in advance. They say the next 4 weeks. So at this point in time in the month, this is November, they'd already have the December month, each meeting prepared. Essentially, at least they know what the themes are and whether they're going to have a meeting fitting around Christmas and that. And then they would send a hard copy of this around, keep it at the meeting, circulate it, ask people to fill in their availability, or they're not if they're not available. And then they start to and then they pump that into an electronic version using Google Docs and circulate that and make sure everyone does that. And then the vice president of education will fill in all the roles based on people saying that they're going to be available, or not saying that they're going to be away. And we'll fill in all of the other roles and make sure that everything is adjusted and set up properly. So they have that so far in advance that and they have this expectation that if you're going to do a role, if you sign up for a role, or you're committed to doing a role because you didn't say you're going to be away, that you're going to be there and the onus is on you. I have not seen that done to that level anywhere else. And I really like that. Ron, give me your thoughts on that. What do you think? Is it good? Is it valuable? Is it something that's unique, or have you seen it elsewhere?
I've been only with 3 clubs, and they do prepare. Richmond Toastmasters do prepare well in advance. With Easy Speak, the program that we've been using lately, it makes it easier to all the members to log in and put your availability on there, and the education person that sees it on their profile, and then that this person is going to be away, or this person taking that role. It makes the chair for the chairperson to easily prepare the agenda, especially when it's going to be in the monitor or printed out. Nevertheless, it's easier with the Easy Speak. But definitely in a week's advance, you can think of things that you can, if you are preparing for a speech, if there's a theme, it could be related to the theme, it could be anything. But based on that, but definitely with the 3 clubs that I've been through, it's been well prepared, but not as Richmond Toastmasters. Some of them have it like 3-4 months advance already.
Sorry, some clubs have it 3 or 4 months in advance.
Yeah, with Richmond Toastmasters from now, we have about 3 to 4 months in advance.
Oh, really?
Themes, yeah, of theme of meetings.
Oh, of the themes, yes, the themes,
yeah.
Yes. Well, there's another club I used to belong to, the Richdale Toastmasters, that does the whole. I think that they do the whole year. They try to prepare the whole year of themes. They have a special night. They have a special table topics night at the beginning of the Toastmaster year, where it's a theme night, and they have people who get up and give mini table topics on why the themes that they are suggesting should be included in the overall themes. And then there's a vote that takes place, and they set the themes for the whole year. And I thought that was brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, no, I
So
completely
yeah,
agree.
getting the so the whole thing about getting the agendas out in advance. You're saying that Richmond now uses Easy Speak.
That's
How
correct.
are they getting the members to actually sign up? What's the process that they use to get the members to sign up in advance?
It is linked to our website itself. Once you get signed up, and then using, a few steps, maybe 5 minutes of your time, uh, creating a password and getting into the system itself, it's quite easy. It's connected to the TI as well. So once you get connected, and I personally never got involved in that type of how the production itself, but always speak to the president or even the education in your team to prepare you for that. But I'm not very involved with regards to the Easy Speak itself, but the program itself is beautifully done, because it's easy for like myself. I can access at any time in my phone or even your house, and you can prepare and you can sign up for any role.
Well, I know how to use it. Do use Easy Speak as well, but I was thinking more about how do you get members to actually do it, to convince them that they motivate them to actually do it.
Constant reminder. We do have some email connection. Constant reminder, and we do a lot of emails when it comes down if there is a role that is not taken, and it's an opportunity for anyone to not have signed in yet, and a reminder for everyone, I think.
So
I
did
think,
they?
yeah, Jim Taylor did a
But the
comment here.
oh yeah. Does the VP Ed still fill in all? They'll still fill in all of the roles if somebody doesn't say that they're going to be away.
Right, yeah. If they're gonna be away, like for myself, I can put that I'm attending, and I'm not I won't be available because of work or whatsoever. It'll give you a reason on that.
Okay, and they do that a few weeks in advance as well,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. I really like that. So the other thing that I thought that's related to that is when you have those roles. One of the things that I know that Richmond does, or at least they used to do when I was there, was that the chair, whoever the chair was for the week, wasn't the VP Ed that was responsible for this, but the chair was responsible to ensure that all of the major roles that reported to the chair were there,
Yes,
and they they not only confirmed that they were there, but then they would ask an introductory question, which is a kind of takes you down to step item number 8. But this is they would ask them an introductory question, and this was going to be part of their script that they would have printed out, is saying they would ask them. Let's say the theme of the night was, let's see what just came up. Let's say it's Remembrance Day, and or Thanksgiving. It's U.S. Thanksgiving. Let's say the theme is Thanksgiving. The preparation would be, what do you do anything special? Oh no, sorry. Use one that's even simpler. Let's use Black Friday. Black Friday's coming up. Will you go out and shop for anything particular because of Black Friday? And that might be one of the introductory questions. And what will happen is that the people who are confirming their role will say, yes, I'm going to be there, and here's my designations, which I know that they also ask for. At least they used to. I'm a DTM or I'm a CC, whatever. And they will then say, and the answer to the question is, I don't shop on Black Friday. Or it might be that I'm really looking forward to getting a new phone, the latest iPhone or whatever. So and then when they go to introduce them, they would say, please welcome for the role of Toastmaster is so-and-so, and give their designations. And if they're a club officer, give their club officer role, and say, this person really likes to, doesn't like to shop on Black Friday, doesn't do anything, or is looking for the latest iPhone on the Black Friday shopping spree. So please welcome so-and-so. And I like that. And I don't see a lot of other clubs doing it that way. Have you, what's your thought on that whole thing about confirming attendance and then how we introduce the roles?
no, I also like it, especially when it comes down to introduction. I mean, when you prepared this with your meeting, it kind of shows professionalism, especially when a guest comes in. And one of the comments that we mostly get is how the meeting is very professional. When it comes when it's not being introduced, it seems to me that you either it's the meeting is not prepared. I really enjoyed or liked when it comes down when the chair introduces the speaker or the next person that is going to be speaking.
Right. Oh, yeah. I think it is good. Well, and introducing them more than just saying, please welcome so and so. It's nice to have that a personalized invitation or a personalized introduction.
Yeah, I
And if,
definitely agree. It kind of get to know, your camaraderie, and when it comes down to your team as well, it kind of introduce. Oh, this person doesn't like Black Friday, or this person loves Black Friday. Oh, I love Black Friday. Maybe we can shop someday.
yeah, exactly. Well, and it also ties together the theme. If the club does have a theme of the week, and most clubs I've been to tend to try to have a theme of the week, and it makes it kind of fun. Some don't, I know that, but many do. And if you do that, then you can bring it together. One of the clubs that I belong to, when they do the introductions, they do the introduction based on knowing the person. If you have a small enough club, or if you are really good memory, people have been around for a long time, then you can introduce people to the role based on just knowing them, knowing their personalities. But if you have a fairly big club where you have a lot of new members, it's kind of hard to do that personalized invitation based on what you know. So being prepared and having that, either asking that introductory question in advance, or even talking to the person in advance, maybe having them provide you with an introduction or a biography that you can use for doing introductions would be very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then the next one is really straightforward. It's arrive early. We've already talked about that one. Providing agendas. Now we talked about that one briefly. You mentioned the screen that Richmond has behind the podium, so the chair will have that behind them, and people can see it from across the room, which is really nice because it's dynamic, it's updated. The other important thing, obviously, is if you don't have that, is to have a handout. And uh, what's your thoughts about what should be on the agenda and what's relevant from your point of view? What do you think is important to have on the agenda?
Well, definitely all the important roles should be on the agenda. It gives you a recap of and time itself, gives you the breakdown of how long each person's going to be. So it's respect of everyone else. The agenda itself is just gonna gives you a heads up what's gonna be on in the next hour, the next 2 hours, or how long is your meeting gonna be. But definitely with the agenda, it should have your theme, the time, respectfully of the time, and how many speakers you're gonna have, and if you're running like a contest or something like that, then having that special things, or even something on your agenda that you can put is maybe on the next week's agenda, and who's going to be your chairperson. That's something that you can do as well.
Exactly. Yeah, to your point, having the time on there and knowing the times, it's really puts pressure on the chair to make sure that they stick to the clock or to the times. But I find that I'm just myself personally, I like to know when things are supposed to be happening, and I like to look at the time and know what's planned for the agenda. And if it's running ahead of schedule, then I'm not stressed out. But if it's running late, I get stressed out. But it's nice to know that it's running late, and then maybe everyone will get stressed out and they'll speed it up a little bit so that they know we're supposed to end this meeting at 8 o'clock, and we're now at 7:55. It better be wrapping up. So if it's not, then we're going to be running late, or something's going to happen. I like knowing where we are in the schedule. I think that's important. Okay, so then the next one is have a script. Have or use a script, and that's what we talked about earlier about the chair having that script, that they have something to follow. And to Jim's question about that, is there a Toastmaster source available for that? as I said, there were some things that were available in that magazine, and there's been some things I've seen available through Toastmasters, but not an actual script for each of the roles. And that's something that I can provide an older version. I can't confirm that it's that there's a new version necessarily that Richmond uses, but you would want to modify that yourself anyway and make sure that you have something that is specific to your own club, and you can feel free to take this and use it as you will. One of the things that Richmond does, those that they have in there, or they had in there, again, those introductory questions. So they knew that the chair would be responsible for identifying the questions that they would be asking of the people that they introduce, and be responsible for writing in their answers and responses so that they can introduce them appropriately that way. In the way that Richmond does it, if they were introducing the Toastmaster, so if the chair was introducing the Toastmaster would also have a script that would have the speakers and the evaluators, and they would ask them the introductory questions, and the table topic master would have the table topic evaluators if there was more than one, and they would also introduce them that way. So that's one thing. I belong to a club where the general evaluator has functionaries, and that would be the grammarian and the odd counter and the timer. So in that case, they would also introduce them. So each club does things a little bit differently. So you would take that script and you would modify it to some way that makes sense for you. Is that something that you've seen as well, Rome? Is it useful, do you think, or is it a hindrance? I know that we used to have one member that used to say a person who's been around for a while as a chair should get rid of the script and do it by without using a script, without using the paper. But I don't know. I kind of like the idea. What's your thoughts on that?
I like the idea of using a script. I mean, when I do chair, I tend not to use the script, as I remember all the goes to those scripts. But in the meantime, if you are starting, or even you've done it several times, I think a script is a great idea. It's just, and it also gives you time. I mean, it tells you and shows you when to finish, and so you don't go over time, because some of us Toastmasters here can talk so much longer than they're supposed to be. Then definitely a script is better for some of us.
Yeah, I can relate. I definitely need timing lights when I'm speaking. And I get frustrated when I don't have the timing lights. Okay, so that's about the script. Shaking hands. This is during the meeting. So I'm going to just throw this out there. I have on these next two items, shaking hand and leading applause, I have a very strong opinion, but I don't want to throw that out there. So Rome, I'll throw it out there after you have a chance to talk. What's your thoughts on the protocol on shaking hands and leading applause?
Absolutely. I agree with shaking hands, especially introducing yourself during the meeting there. I don't know. I'm kind of interested of what your thoughts about the shake hands, but definitely introducing yourself, shake hands is one of the things that I like anyways.
What about the leading applause? We'll get into the shaking hands in a minute because I wanted to talk about something that's specific.
Leading applause, absolutely. If you're chairing, you got to lead the group to lead the applause. Once you lead the applause, everybody will follow. Every time you chair, lead the applause, and makes it important.
Right. Well, so then it actually, I'm going to take it into these three things together. So introducing and thanking presenters as well. So I'm going to throw these things. I'm going to put my opinionated hat on. To me, one of the most important things is that the chair should, or whoever is leading that portion of the meeting, whether it be the chair, the Toastmaster, the table topic master, whoever is running that portion of the meeting, that if there's people coming up to do roles, so they're running a portion of the meeting and they're bringing people up, they should introduce them. They should applaud. They should when they're coming up, they should applaud them. They should lead the applause so that everyone sees that this is the appropriate time. They should do it enthusiastically, and then they should shake a person's hand when they come up. And now it's a little awkward because you're trying to applaud and then you have to shake your hand, but it's good to do that. But the person who is leading that portion of the meeting should also be sitting near the front of the room. So if I remember, and I try to remember to do this, I always have a seat near the front of the room that's not a seat for a member or a guest to sit at during the meeting. It's for the chair or the chair to sit down when the Toastmaster is up there, or the chair to sit down when someone else is doing a role. It's for the Toastmaster to sit there when there's a speaker or an evaluator presenting. It's for the table topic master to sit there when the table topic speakers are up there, or the table topic evaluators are doing the role. So they don't have to go back to their seat, which could be at the back of the room, and have to run back up and shake the hand of the person who they've brought up. So they're there to do that, and it's important for me, from my point of view, when a person finishes their role, that the person who introduced them shakes their hand, and it is up there. They don't have to have that awkward moment. They should be right there to shake their hand, thank them for their doing that role, and then either ending that session or then bringing up the next presenter. And that's why, in leading the applause, it's just got to be that cheerleader, and it keeps the energy high, and it really, to me, it really makes it a special event, that the person feels that they're treated specially, and the audience, whether they be the members or there be guests, that they see that this was that when someone goes up there, they get a warm reception and they're appreciated. Absolutely. So there's my rant. Go for it, bro.
Absolutely, I completely agree when it comes down to introducing the next speaker and shaking their hands and leading the applause. Once you get that hype and bringing that speaker coming in, everyone will follow and make it more exciting and make it more fun. I definitely agree with you. It's a good rant.
Is there? I've got one more item here, and this is make sure that you provide awards. And this works if you have enough speakers, you have enough roles. But even if all you're doing is, even if you have a small club and you have a small group, you should at least have table topics. And if you have table topics, you're going to have more than one table topic. So it'd be nice to give some award. It doesn't mean you have to give them a ribbon or you have to give them a certificate. But I like having someone who is appreciated for doing something, and you have a bit of a contest. I kind of like that contest aspect. And so you're not giving awards for everyone who does a role. What I'm talking about is for someone who goes and does something special. Richmond Toastmasters has, if I remember from the last meeting I went to, which was a couple of weeks ago, I went to one as a guest. There was still the 4 awards, which is the
most improved.
Most improved. Thank you. Think about that. Best table topic, best speaker, and best evaluator, and not quite in that order. I think to go most improved, best table topic, best evaluator, and then your big drum roll is for the best speaker.
Right.
And I mean, you can do that if you have multiple speakers. If you only have one speaker, or you only have 2, you might think, yeah, it's not really fair, especially if you have someone do it their icebreaker and then someone who's working on their some advanced level. It's a little bit hard. But if you're having at least table topics, I like that. And I really did like the most improved, because it says it doesn't matter what the role is. They could have been timer, but if they've done something, they've really stepped up and they've done something and they've learned a lot from it and they've improved a lot, then you're recognizing them. I like having that little bit of voting and community support, showing that the other members support that person by being able to vote for it, and have a little ballot that people can sign up, fill in, and just say this is the person I select for that role, and they should get some sort of recognition, even if it's just an applause. But a printed certificate like Richmond does, it's not a fancy certificate. It's just a printout, just a page that has it, and somebody writes in their name, and the president signs it. But it's kind of nice to have that. I don't see that at a lot of clubs. I see it on some. But what's your thoughts on that one, Ron?
Yeah, there are some clubs that are smaller clubs that I've been to that there's no awards that is giving at the end of the meeting. But definitely, I enjoy it. It's a competition of yourself, and makes it feel good at the end of the night, and that you were voted the best speaker or the best table topic or the best evaluator or most improved. It gives me more to go to Toastmasters and compete for the next weekend or next week's speaking or table topic. It makes me want to speak in a table topics because I want to win that award. It is a friendly competition level when it comes down to Richmond Toastmasters with awards.
It is. And now, one of the things that they do, just for everyone who's listening in on this, and I hope you're listening, paying attention, that they do a pretty good job of having a Toastmaster of the Year award at the end of their year. They have a banquet and Toastmaster of the Year award, and I know several clubs do that, and that's a really impressive thing. One of the criteria is attendance, and you look to see who attended the meeting, and you can get that information from Easy Speak or from your agendas, however they're done. The other thing is getting some additional points based on things like being how many times did you win an award of best speaker or best table topic, and things like and best evaluator. Those things are really can be used to help in making the determination of who your club would appoint or who you would present the Toastmaster of the Year award to. I think that can be really inspiring, especially for people. And I know that there's a competition that would go on, and I think it's a friendly competition, as you said, friendly competition. And you and I, as you recall, used to compete quite a bit head to head on a number of things. And it was a lot of fun. And I really had fun in that. And I would, if you won best speaker, if we were both speaking that night, I would be pushing real hard to step up my game so that the next time, want to make sure that I improved. And I like that friendly competition because it really does push you to do better.
No, I completely agree.
Kind of like
there's numerous times that, and when I see your name on it, there, yeah, I'm gonna have to do a better, louder voice, a faster voice, or be even funny. So just to beat you that night.
It's almost like having a mini contest every week. So you can do this. So I think it can be fun if you do it in a friendly way, and you do have to make sure that that the same person isn't always getting the awards because someone likes them. There's a popularity contest. It should be based on just people trying to do something good, and I really do think that clubs ought to do something like that. So I put that on there as this. So these are some of the best practice items that I had, and I wanted to ask you I have another slide that's on how to end a meeting, but for during the actual running of the meeting, do you have some other ideas on things that you think are important to do during a Toastmaster meeting?
Yeah, I mean, about a few months ago, instead of we had a joke master, I changed it a little bit. We had a riddle master. So time to time, if you don't have a joke, you can provide a riddle. It doesn't have to be a 2-minute speech or anything. It's just a quick riddle. That's one thing that we added in our agenda. If you can't provide a joke, you can provide a riddle. There are some few cases that we change our table topics. I don't know if any of you clubs run a backwards table topics before, or a debate night. Those are the few things that to make things interesting, so it doesn't have to be the same agenda all the time. So we have a backwards table topics. We have a debate night time to time. We added some riddles during the meeting there, so make it more exciting and make it a little bit of change, because time to time when you see those agendas, it's always the same thing. And when people see some changes, I kind of want to take a look at what's the riddle of the day, what's this debate and how to debate. Those kind of few things that can be added and changed during your Toastmasters meeting.
I noticed that Anna just popped up, said you can having a tongue twister, and I like that. One of the roles that Richmond does is called a Heart Master, which another club that I belong to now has one called the Quiz Master. It's the same thing. They have somebody who's responsible for listening closely to all of the presenters and capturing little questions, little gems of wisdom or information that they've got from all of these speakers, from many of the speakers. And then they go up and they have 2 minutes to ask questions, or they have a certain amount of time to ask questions of the audience. Mm-hmm. And if and people who get it right usually get a treat, a candy or something like that. I love that when that happens. So it's really a fun thing to do, and it keeps people alert. And again, it's like a little treat, and it can be fun. Now, the other thing that Richmond does that I thought was really good, that really was effective for me as an individual, and that is to have fines. The grammarian fines for 5 cents for every filler word to a maximum of 25 cents. So you could get away with 5 filler words. And then they had a word of the day penalty. So if you didn't say the word of the day and you had a speaking rule, you'd be charged 25 cents for not using the word of the day. They also had a fine for not wearing your name tag. So if you didn't wear your name tag, there was $1 fine. So they had some other things, but those 2 fines, I liked those fines. They were small. The first two, the grammarian one, or the odd counter version, and the word of the day. And I learned, because I'm cheap and I didn't always have small change with me, to not say filler words as much, and it really kept me on my toes. And I was hoping that if I did say them, that people wouldn't hear them, or it would be very few that I would do. And I like that. I think those are fun things to do.
I
Is there
agree.
anything else that you were?
Yeah, I agree. If you have something like you said, if you're cheap and you don't have change, it's one way not to say any filler words, and that's how I learned myself too. It's how much am I gonna pay this time not to say this word, or having the word of the day, say it again. So it is a great example.
And I think adding that little bit of competition, that little bit of fun is, I think it adds to the meeting. And I know that the guests always seem to like it because, first of all, the guests didn't have to pay the fines, but we set an expectation up pretty quick about what should be done and what can be done, what's appropriate.
And the money
Okay,
itself,
so
Sean, as you know, it does go towards our yearly banquet, and if the it's not a big thing, but at least goes towards your banquet.
right, so it's being used by the club for a positive thing. So that's a good
That's
thing.
right.
Now I want to get to this last slide because this is on how to close a meeting. And I know that, and then I want to give the audience a bit of a chance to talk or to at least throw some ideas out there. Just closing the meeting, just some key things to make sure that you're doing, and this comes again from the Toastmasters magazine article in 2016. Making sure you thank the Toastmaster. We kind of talked about that. There's a club business check, and that's to see if there's any business required during the meeting. I know Richmond Toastmasters generally has a business meeting, an actual 10-minute business meeting right in the middle of the meeting, which is a little intense because it puts a lot of pressure on the chair, and that's one of the things that raises the level of the club. And that most people who chair a meeting, Richmond Toastmasters, know how to run a business meeting, and they know how they have a parliamentarian. They know how to make sure that they're doing all of the motions and they open up the business, and it's very effective. I found that in the clubs that don't do that, they usually struggle to have people with that skill set. And then, of course, then they're asking for announcements at the end and for guest feedback, giving some feedback on the next meeting, reminding everybody what's going on, and making sure they adjourn. So these are some of the things that are considered to be best practices for closing a meeting. I'm opening that one up to you, Rome, for comments on any of these things. See if there's any that you specifically like, or if there's something that's missing from there that you think ought to be.
Definitely the announcements and the guest feedback is when closing a meeting. The guest feedback itself is very important. It's if they see something good, or if they see something for us to improve, that's very valuable to the club itself, especially when it comes down to new eyes or new ears that are coming in through the meeting itself. That for me is very important.
Got it. Well, Anna was just asking about it. What do you think the Toastmaster for? So this is where the president chairs the meeting, or there is a chair. So it's saying that the end of when someone has finished their role, if someone else is taking over responsibility for the meeting. So in the case of this one about the Toastmaster, it's saying that the Toastmaster potentially runs the meeting between the president opening the meeting and the president essentially closing the meeting or wrapping it up. And then they would thank the Toastmaster for that. In many clubs like Richmond Toastmasters and several other I belong to, the Toastmaster is only responsible for the prepared speech portion of the meeting. So they would be responsible for the speakers and the evaluators for the prepared speech portion. And so when their role is, they're introduced and then they're thanked at the end of that. But this one was specifically referring to where you have the president run or who is actually the chair of the meeting, and the Toastmaster is one who runs the pieces in between. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, so that was those are the things that I could think of, and hopefully the things you thought of. I'm actually not going to run this as a poll because I didn't want to have to write anything. But I wanted to open up to the audience and ask if there's any feedback or thoughts of things that they think that we would that would make the meeting a better meeting, a more professionally run meeting. I'd like to hear from you, so please feel free to type into the chat section, or you can ask a question, and I'm going to check if there was any questions in there, and I didn't see any pop up, and there's none. So just checking that. But please feel free to type in if there's something else that you think is important or that would be of value in a meeting to make it more professionally run, things that you do yourselves. And Rome, I'm going to go back to you, and while we're waiting to see if anyone types in anything, is there anything that you've seen in addition to this that you like that other clubs do or should do that would make the meeting itself more efficient, more effective?
Again, it's all based on time. I mean, I belong to another professional club, a professional club where you can deliver your speech and redo it again based on the evaluation that they provided you, and it gives you an opportunity to redo your speech again into a more refined speech and prepare for yourself. And you gather all those comments, those evaluation that other evaluators do, an open roundtable type of evaluation, and you get to redo your speech again. It kind of, that's one thing that I really like.
I like that concept too. That's something that Pathways now does, and it requires you to do as part of your level 1 in Pathways, is to do a speech and then get some feedback and do it again. Although you're doing it usually a week or two apart rather than back to back in the same meeting. Your chair, I see from Josanna that the chair chooses a meeting theme 1 week in advance. I agree that having that meeting theme in advance is, first of all, if you have a meeting theme, I think it makes the meeting more fun. It just adds a sense of something special, as long as the themes are positive and upbeat. We just had a meeting theme this week that was Movember, so it was around whatever, beards, mustaches, and men's health. It was a little bit of fun around that, and we had one on remembrance and things like that. So you try to do a topical ones for the week for that period. Choosing it a week in advance is great if you don't have those advanced, if you don't have the schedules out in advance that are weeks in advance or months in advance. So that's doing it is good. And as I mentioned, there's a couple of clubs that I belong to that actually plan out the themes for the full year, or at least several months in advance, and that's quite. It's handy for the VP Ed, and then they just announce it usually a few weeks in advance, and so you know that what's coming up is the theme. So to what Rome said earlier, if you wanted to work on a special speech or presentation, you could time it so that it runs during the week where the theme is most appropriate. Yeah, sorry, what I mean is whoever will be chairing. Oh, whoever's chairing the coming meeting gets to choose the theme. Ah, okay. Oh, by the way, Anna just talked about food. Yes, food, great idea. Ron, what do you think about food?
Oh, everyone loves food. Everyone can definitely relate to food. I agree.
Well, just so you know, Anna, one of the things that Richmond Toastmasters does, they allocated $12. It was $12 or $15 per meeting for a budget, as part of their budget, and they would have a food master, and so they have a break. They have a 10-minute break, and that person would have the opportunity to. The person would be identified in advance, and they would go do some shopping. They would, and then they had a rule; it had to be healthy. Although the last meeting I was at, none of the food that was there was healthy, but they have some snacks. It's just something light that people can nibble on, so they can go around and try, and everyone indulges, and so it's a lot of fun. And they get reimbursed. The person goes out, they get reimbursed to the amount that's allocated per week for that. So that was fun. So I like that. Yeah, food, great idea. Any other ideas? Because we're running down to the top of the hour. I'm not seeing anything coming in. All right. Oh, one more. Karaoke. I haven't seen that done. That could be fun. That would be an interesting part. It's kind of like a table topic thing, but it's karaoke. Probably throw a song up there. I don't know. It'd be fun. All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you all for attending. Rome, thank you very much for helping me with this session on how to effectively chair a meeting. I really appreciate your. Yeah, it's been great working with you all the years. I've been with Toastmasters and great knowing you. And I think you've pushed me to do all the right things, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
My pleasure, my friend.
Okay, and to all of you, Thank you. So to all of you, we have another seminar Sunday next week, and I can't remember what it is. I didn't put it into the agenda here. I will have to take a look at it, but please check the events page on District 21. We'll be sending out an email to let you all know about it. And thank you all for attending again. With that, I'm going to close this meeting.
Have a great evening, everyone.